Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. If you hear the white noise in the background, that is not my white noise machine. So if you see over there on the nightstand, listeners, I'm sitting in a hotel room. There's a blue little Brookstone tower. So I don't travel anymore, ever, without my white noise machine. Because if it's wintertime and the air conditioning's not running, New York City will keep me awake. So you probably have deduced by now, with your earbuds in your ear or you're driving in your car, that I'm not in the library at the Creative Circus. I'm actually in the Carlton Hotel on the east side of Manhattan, meeting up with Frank Cartagena. And Frank, now, Frank sends me a direct message on the Facebook and says, so how do I get on this thing? I think it was probably the shortest, quickest message I've ever gotten. First of all, flattered that anyone would care to want to talk to me and you, my listeners, on this podcast. And then I kind of started digging around to find out who this guy is, and people had heard of him, and he has quite a background. So I do have a discerning intent on this podcast. I don't just take anyone that asks to be on here. Just in case you're wondering, the episodes that you haven't heard weren't good enough. Okay, just want you to know that. So the reason why we're actually having this conversation is that Frank is somebody. So I want to read his bio that you could have found on the internet, but I'm going to go ahead and go for it. So Frank was recently ranked number 7 on Business Insider's 30 under 30 most creative people in advertising. He is a creative director at Deutsch, which you knew, but prior to working at Deutsch, his work was credited with DDB New York's creative resurgence, having produced the 5th most awarded campaign of the year, which led to the Gunn Report ranking him as the 5th most awarded U.S. copywriter in 2014. He's won gold in both the film and outdoor categories at Cannes in the same year, as well as previous gold recognition at One Show, Art Directors Club, D&AD nominations, to name a few. His hashtag killer campaign has become one of the most recognized social media efforts to date, and his work is in the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art, Smithsonian, and Boston Museum of Science. Frank grew up in New Jersey, was raised in Massachusetts, and started his career in Boston, working at both Hill Holliday and Arnold Worldwide. He currently lives in New York City, and worked at Deutsch. Let's run through the bio again. Started off at Hill Holliday, was at Arnold, DDB New York, and Deutsch. And let me just say, each of these is about, let's say, 2 years, a little over a year, almost 3 years at DDB, and a little over 2 years right now at Deutsch, where he's a creative director working on. First of all, you guys should check out, it's on the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/DGMS podcast. You can check out some of Frank's work, which has a very subtle but poignant sense of humor to it. There's some awkwardness in his style. And I've known him now for, what would you want to say, 90 seconds, maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And there's an approachability to the guy. He looks a lot younger than his resume would have him sound. And he's gracious enough to give up his afternoon to talk to you guys. And I just want to welcome you, Frank, to room 1015 of the Carlton Hotel and the microphone.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were just talking before we started recording about all the brands you're working on and that you're overseeing. You know, you got a team back there doing the work. Is this the first time in your career where you're kind of overseeing a collection of accounts and some people? Is this an adjustment for you?
Yeah, I think it's the first time. It's not the first time we've overseen teams, but it's the first time we're running. So right now we're running Sherwin-Williams, which is a collection of 12 different brands,
yeah. And
that's the first time for that. So in the first week it was a bit of a transition, but we kind of got the hang of it now.
That's cool. So let's talk about this. So you're ACD at DDB, working on Volkswagen, New York Lottery, Reebok. What has precipitated moves? Because you've gone from good agencies to good agencies. What is it that sort of informs a decision to switch jobs? So what has it been for you?
Yeah, the past it's been different at every job. So the first, I worked at Hill Holliday first, and that was more just, I think I was wasn't making enough money to live. I had an ever-growing credit card debt, so I had to move. So that was Arnold, and Arnold was an easy move because it was right down the street in Boston. Yeah. And then I moved from Arnold to DDB because I was getting married to a girl in New York.
Wait, so hold on a second. So you're pretty much underpaid for the first job. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's pretty
Doesn't
true.
that pretty much happen?
That's for everyone. But I was there for a couple of years. I swapped out the majority of my student work. So, I worked on a couple brands like, Dunkin' Donuts, which allows you to do tons of work because it's a retail client. The stuff was better than my student work, so I was able to use that to then get a job at Arnold.
Did you get free donuts?
Only when we went there. They have free donuts, and they have everything in the store, basically.
Oh, cool.
Free brownies.
Nice. Like when you went to the client, they had stuff for you.
Yeah.
That's
like we'd load up on we'd do the Munchkin challenge before our client meeting, so see how many Munchkins you could eat,
God.
which is a bad idea.
I was saying, how does that make the meeting go? That's cool. So, all right, so New York was a life decision, is what you're saying? So you left Arnold to come to New York for a...
Yeah, I kind of made the decision to move to New York, more life decision than work decision, and I got really lucky. So,
And then, so why did you leave there to go to Deutsch?
Well, there's a bit of a story behind it. So we worked for Menno Kluwen at DDB, and we started doing, the first time I worked for him was for Water's Life, which is a charity.
Yeah.
And we started doing work, we started winning awards. And
is that hashtag killer?
That was hashtag killer,
right.
yeah.
So for the listeners that haven't done their homework, so this was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
It's just an amazing piece, and if you're not familiar with it, it was basically where they would take these tweets that were, first world problems, and they would take these tweets of people complaining that they were awakened by their maid, and literally fly to Haiti and have some person in an impoverished living situation read these tweets and apologize. I'm sorry that you had to wake up early from your maid. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. Well, I could talk a little bit more about that too, and it's I think what was successful about that was it got people to it caught people off guard. It got them to laugh a little bit, and then you can watch. I like showing it to people because I watch their face, because they start laughing, and then about halfway through they realize what's going on, and they, their face turns, like the smile goes away.
To shame.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of guilt,
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's why it works, because it gives you a couple different emotions.
You know why I think it works too is because it puts a human face on, poverty in Haiti.
Yeah.
Those two words, poverty in Haiti doesn't mean a whole lot to me until I see a child, basically, until I start thinking about the fact that a child wakes up in the morning and has a life like I do that's not like mine.
But yeah, that's the whole point of all the Water's Life stuff we try to do is make that connection between the U.S. and, whether it's Haiti or Kenya, or because it's easy to, see an ad on TV with kids with flies on their face and kind of zone out, because we are just we see it on TV, but we can't really connect to it.
Right.
But if they're saying our words, or if they're doing something that we can connect to,
it's cool.
It seems to have a bigger impact on people.
That's really cool. So what agency did that come? That came from.
That was at DDB.
From DDB,
yeah. So that was really more of a proactive kind of thing, where I called the client and we had an idea. We actually did one before that did one idea that kind of introed us to the client. It wasn't great, but it got some trust, and then the client invited us, said, if you ever want to come to Haiti. She didn't think we were going to, and she had like a $6,000 budget. Wow. They were super small at the time, so
right. That's really small, by the way, you guys. That's not money.
That's not normal. But so it was me and 3 other guys. So it was my partner Sam Shepard and Menno, who was the ECD at the time, who shouldn't have gone in most situations. He probably wouldn't have gone, but he was really into it. And then we we hired a guy from the Apple store who knew how to shoot.
Oh,
and now he's actually a director, but
of course he is.
Yeah, we flew to Haiti on $6,000. We slept in tents. We each learned like different. I mean, I was more like the script guy, so I had the folder, and I was kind of like more like a script supervisor.
All right, let's be completely honest with it. So, what's the motivation for you? Is it to help? Is it to raise awareness? Is it to win a line at Cannes? Like on the pie chart, where does it kind of fit out for you?
So yeah, we've had a lot of discussions internally about this. It's turned into both. I think initially it probably was a little bit more selfish to win awards, but once you go over there, you see it. It becomes more personal. Just like we talked about before.
I think that's really interesting, though. I think that whatever will motivate a creative person to solve something creatively doesn't really matter what the motivation is because somehow it's triggered something in you to solve this thing. So it's a little bit holier than thou to say that's wrong because you're doing it selfishly. You know what I mean? Because it's still made a difference. It's like, okay, and I talk about this sometimes with my students. That's like, figure out what it is that's motivating to you, and no one's gonna judge you for saying I want to make more money or I want to win the most awards. Just be honest about it and get at it, because you can end up doing something really awesome because of whatever motivated you.
Yeah, and we were we have a very good relationship with the client now. We text and stuff, but I actually just sold them our latest idea via text. But
that's awesome.
It started as we were very open to what our kind of roles were in the assignment, and we had a really good idea. They needed a little bit more exposure. They were on the smaller side at the time, and so it was a good partnership because we were both very honest with each other. We knew each other's roles, and then she saw that we were willing to go the extra mile for her.
Well, see, that's another thing. It's like, what's in it for you is that you're going to get a great piece. The agency's not making a lot of money. You're not necessarily doing a big budget piece. So that's really cool. It's a win-win. But it's a win-win in the margins and in the shadows that can end up being something that really can elevate a career, which is really cool.
And that one happened to make a lot of money for them, too. So
it's great.
So
really, really cool.
That was good.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. So I'm looking at your work, and a lot of it has just I said this earlier, kind of an awkward sense of humor. So I look at the Krylon paint, which is just fucking great. I fucking love those. And I'm looking at the Volkswagen spot, which is just cringeworthy. What do you enjoy? Have you ever written print? Do you enjoy writing? Do you enjoy script writing? What excites you? What are the kind of projects that get you excited?
Yeah. It's funny. We've been internally. I've been asked this question a lot too.
Really?
We've had some schools come through recently, but it kind of is everything. I can get excited about a print ad. We don't do too many print ads anymore.
Right. Is print relevant for a portfolio?
For a student portfolio, yeah, very, because it gets I can't sit through a 3-minute case study just based on timing, and if a print ad grabs my attention, then I can sift through the case. So we don't do a lot of print, but I can get excited about print, but I can also get excited about something that's a little bit more like the Krylon experiential thing we just did, which was the 127-mile yard sale. And then we turned it into the first ever Pinterest yard sale. So that was kind of like an experiential idea.
So do you think we should tell the listeners what the Krylon spots? Because I'm assuming a lot of them haven't gone on. So do you want to describe those spots, or should I try?
It was kind of so it came about where I think the brief was entirely different when we started.
Right. Explain exactly the spot.
So the spot is a family goes to a yard sale, and there's kind of like this old curmudgeon of a man standing there. They buy something from him.
He's wearing a fanny pack, just FYI.
He's wearing a fanny pack. I forgot about that. So they buy something from him for super cheap. They turn around, and basically right in front of him, he's kind of off in the, his head's in the clouds. They spray paint it in 2 seconds in the commercial.
They spray paint it kind of like Grand Theft Auto style, like Chop Shop. Like it's like they turn around, choo, choo, choo.
Yeah, and then they hand it back to him, and they sell it back for 10 times the money. So, and then he does something stupid at the end.
The strategy is so great.
Yeah.
It's such a great way to sell. I got to tell you, if that assignment's given in class, there's so much overthinking. There's so much convoluted shit that's going to try to figure out how to position spray paint. And the simplicity of it is that it makes shit better, it makes shit newer.
The best part about that script too, like
sorry about my language,
the way it comes alive is, the script on paper isn't good. Like, by all means, I mean, the idea is interesting, but it's a very straight script. And then, thank goodness for we sent it to Harold Einstein, and he loves those kind of scripts. He's a director who kind of deals with. He's definitely more deadpan, quirky. Guy. And
what had he done that you'd seen? How do you select the director? Did you know him? How did that work?
We actually worked with him on Volkswagen too. Other cringeworthy spot.
Dude, it's brutal.
And So we had worked with him in the past, but he was on our radar. He did a lot of work with, does a lot of work with Jerry Graff, and he's just that kind of...
You guys have similar sense of humor. So do you have that sensibility in your mind when you're writing these scripts? I mean, because the script is a skeleton, right? So you're fleshing... By the way, it's fleshing out, not fleshing out. It's your...
Good point.
Right?
Yeah.
So you flesh it out with the director. So almost like when people write roles in movies with an actor in mind, do you write scripts sometimes with a look and feel and rhythm in mind?
Yeah. Especially with all of our kind of junior creatives, they don't know how to necessarily write scripts when they come in, so we point them to a director, so we know which directors write for the project, and we try to pick the best one. So obviously, if it's that kind of... Harold is a good kind of point of reference for a lot of our Sherwin work because it's DIY brands. They're very to the point, matter of fact. So we try to write to him, and then hopefully, Krylon was specifically written for him, and then we sent it to him, and he liked it.
It's really, really cool. Yeah, there's a certain style that that these spots we're talking about, and a lot of Jerry Graff's work has, where there's a something about beige that just sets you onto sort of it's a skew of reality to a point where it's just quirky and awkward at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be fully normal when it starts.
Right. The palette is all tuned monotone. Really, really interesting. So, I don't know why I wrote this down. I'm going to read it because I wrote it down. What comes first, the idea or the execution? I know why I asked this question, because a student recently asked me on the side, pulled me aside or sent me an email and said, can you come up with ideas backwards? And it's kind of what we're talking about with the director. Can you come up with an execution and then figure out what the idea or the strategy is?
We're kind of tied to our strategies. In
the real world.
In the real world. So as creatives, we're tied to it, but the client can always shift that, and that happens a lot too. Is they might see our first round of ideas and realize the strategy is a little bit off. But I think the idea always comes first. I think showing the team's directors and having them write directors, that gets them tonally on point, and it kind of narrows the box for them so they can write within that. But they still need to have an idea before.
Absolutely. And we're talking about how I love the idea before I mention the execution of it. But the difference between being a creative director and being a creative director who's in the 30 most creative under 30 is that your spots are shareable because the execution made it not be just a demonstration. That spot could have been a demonstration that felt like a retail hardware store ad. Yeah. And it could have been fine.
Yeah.
It's good, smart. But it becomes a shareable piece of art and comedy when it's combined with the execution.
Yeah.
And and that's your role too, right? That's the creative's role.
It also, that style especially helps our clients kind of, like I said, on paper it's not much, but we kind of have this vision for it, and so does the director, where it can build, but it allows the client to buy it.
That's cool.
So
talk to me about your art director partners in your career so far, and let's talk about the ones that were good and why they were good. What makes for a good collaboration?
Maybe I'll talk about the current one first. His name is Sam Shepard, and I think we're just we have the similar sensibilities. We're both kind of I guess, not too artsy guys, more like sports guys. And we like a lot of the same stuff. We find a lot of the same stuff funny. And we got paired together randomly, and it just kind of worked. But it's got to be a taste thing, and it's got to be, you're with this person for 10 hours, 12 hours a day. So you have to like the person too.
Yeah.
But we also get along too with our boss who is different in a way. He likes different things from us, and that kind of spreads our wings a little bit too.
All right, so bear with me a little bit while I get granular, because I'm teaching people who are just coming into the whole concept of collaboration. And how often have you had an art director partner or a creative director partner come back and just send you back and say, no, rework this, rewrite this? And has that happened? How did the process work? How did they approach you? How did you deal with that?
Well, would it be the art director or creative director?
Let's say it's your partner.
Okay. Very rarely. I think right now we have such a good, first you need kind of that rapport with each other. So, if he really doesn't like something, I'm not gonna I'm not going to push for it. You kind of both have to be on the same page. Sometimes I will, sometimes he will, and we kind of just let in that case.
And he gets it too. Like it's not like you're going to somehow sell your partner on liking an idea. Like if he doesn't like the idea, okay, let's keep hammering something new.
Yeah, and we're not really emotional about it. At this point in our careers, there's no idea that can't be beaten or that we need to fall in love with so much. I wasn't always this way, but it's not worth sometimes it's not worth the fight if you guys both aren't on board. And now too, on the flip side, if he says he really likes something and I don't, I'll say, okay, let's leave it in. Let's see what our boss has to say. Because I don't think there's any downside in that either. There's more downside in kind of saying no all the time.
I agree completely. I wanted to hear that you articulated that really, really, really well.
Thank you.
And I hope that it makes sense to people in the abstract, because the part that really resonated with me, two parts. One was you saying that you weren't always like that. And I think that when you're younger and less seasoned, you start to become protective because it's your ego, it's your career, it's your livelihood. It's also your affection for that thing that you think you can't do better than. And then once you see stuff dying in front of you, or either by guillotine or a slow metastasized cancer that takes a year for it finally to just become useless and dead, you start to realize that things can be better than things were, and that's the maturity thing. But that was really cool.
One story on just like my first ever TV spot that I did at Hill Holiday. We shot it, we edited it, and I think the day before it was about to launch, so I told all my friends, I told my parents. They killed the entire concept, so it was never going to run. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of me being kind of like emotionless for ideas, because it's, you can't get too attached until it's actually out there. And it helps.
I admire that. I admire that you took that route. Because I was just having lunch with Norm Gray and we're talking about my brother. He doesn't listen to this. Fuck it up. Shit. He's an advertising creative director as well. And I talked to him a few years ago about maybe teaching at the Creative Circus. And he says, dude, you don't want me teaching there. Because he's just so jaded.
Yeah.
And I think you can get to a point where that thing was produced. It's like you can be bitter, or you can also be like, okay, well, today's a new day. And I think that you did a very good job, and gets psychoanalytical. You did a good job protecting your own emotions by saying, like, we can do more. We can do something else. We can do something better.
Well, you can spend that, 24 hours after something gets killed.
Yeah, Dave Canning talked about this.
But the faster you can get over that, the faster you can come up with new ideas. Right. And, especially if you're going against another team, mm-hmm. The more time you lose mourning your idea, right, the more time they have to kind of beat you.
That's right. That's interesting, too. So let's talk about the boss setup. So who were the great ones? And you've already mentioned the one you moved with, and you have to say his name again, the one you moved with from DDB.
Yeah, his name is Menno Kluin.
And why has he been good? Why did you want to move with him? Why is he someone you want to follow?
He's just, there's a couple reasons. One, he's, one of the most awarded kind of executive creative directors in the world. Two, we hit it off. We kind of like the same things. We have a good rapport with him. We're not scared to take him ideas or take risks, or, I think at this point now he definitely trusts us. And he gives us, throughout our kind of relationship, he's given us a little bit more rope every time. So
that's huge.
He doesn't look at us the same way. I think some bosses would probably look at you the same way now as the first day but every time, we started as a art director, copywriter, and, every step of the way he's given us a little bit more, if we do a successful project,
great,
a little bit more, responsibility on the next one, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and now we're, overseeing teams and that sort of thing.
I think that's really cool, because it's rare to hear a manager helping train someone to manage as well.
Yeah.
I mean, have you felt like it hasn't been like being thrown into cold water to suddenly be managing, right? So he's helped lead you along that way?
Yeah, so it started with, after #Killer, which we talked about a little earlier, then we would oversee interns coming up with ideas for Water is Life. So, that's no real risk to any client relationship other than the one we've kind of made on our own. So we learned to kind of creative direct that way. And then we started coming up with ideas, and those ideas that we then creative directed started winning awards. And then he gave us a little bit more responsibility. And then when we moved over to Deutsch, we started overseeing more and more teams. And then, I think probably like 6 or 7 months ago, we got the Sherwin business. So
that's great. So what about creative directors that were writers? Have you had the experience, and maybe you haven't, where you worked for a writer who pushed you and improved you as a writer?
Yeah. So I think that's kind of everyone I've worked for a little bit.
That's great.
The first one was at Hill Holiday, and his name is Tim Cawley. Mm-hmm. And he was, we haven't talked about this yet, but I went to an ad school, but it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't a real ad school to offend anyone, but it was kind of an 8-week course.
It wasn't a full program.
It was an introduction. Mm-hmm. So that was more my ad school where, he taught me how to write headlines. He taught me how to write scripts. We had to write a ton of radio. So that's where I kind of learned how to do from radio then into TV.
That's interesting. My brother worked at Hill Holiday, did some great radio at Hill Holiday years ago.
Yeah. And we tried really hard, and, it's good for a junior because you want to kill that radio assignment, even though maybe a more senior person might just want to get it off their plate.
You worked at agencies that have great writing pedigree.
Yeah,
as well.
So he taught
Arnold,
me
for sure.
He taught me my kind of introductory, and then I worked at Arnold under Roger Baldacci, who was also a writer, and he's really good. He did a lot of the truth stuff, the famous stuff like The Singing Cowboy and Shards of Glass. So he taught me a little bit more. And then
that's fortunate.
Yeah,
it's great.
And then when I moved to DDB, it was Menno, who's an art director. So he kind of helped elevate. I had more or less like the conceptual stuff down, but he helped elevate everything, both conceptually but more visually.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
So I think that's what my stuff was lacking before I worked for him.
What do you think right now? This is a totally different question. What's the best thing about being a big-time New York ad man?
I think the best thing is that the stakes are a little higher. The goals are a little higher. Every assignment is kind of like, we think about Cannes. We didn't necessarily always do that in Boston. So I think that's
interesting. I think that wasn't even the question, but I love the answer. That's a great answer. Because you equated, when I said big time ad man, you heard like, creative director in New York.
Yeah.
I just was just asking like, what's the best part about being in this business? But that's very, very interesting answer.
I did hear New York.
No, that's, in fairness, I kind of half meant that too. Because I remember when I was here, and I remember being on the subway and seeing an ad of either mine or my wife's on the subway, or seeing something on TV and saying, "Hey man, I'm a big time New York ad guy."
Yeah.
I may have said New York when I asked you the question just now.
Yeah. My big time Boston moment was when my parents were at the beach and a airplane banner drove by them on the beach that I had written for Dunkin' Donuts. So that was...
That's cool. It's great. I don't know why I wrote this question down. Probably because of the tone of your work. Have you ever presented an idea that was so personal, so autobiographical that it was embarrassing?
I don't think so, because I have, but I don't let it be known. So that if they kill it, it doesn't seem like I've just put myself out there.
Right. Well, I think we kind of probably all do that.
But
right?
Yeah, I can think of probably 3 or 4 scenarios where something's died.
That's cool.
So
you're overseeing juniors, and you mentioned some circus folk, Ilana Wolstein and Kevin Marr, both just awesome human beings.
Yeah.
And shout out to both of those lovely human beings. What's the best way for a new hire, junior hire, to best endear himself or herself to you? What makes you excited?
I think it's just work ethic. You don't necessarily have to have great ideas, but Ilana's a good example, and her partner Funny. They come with 30 ideas every time, and they're not always all great, but there's usually something in there, and they they killed themselves every single round. And Kevin's the same way. He's he interned at DDB for us, and now he works for us at Deutsch. Same way, same work ethic, kept going.
Puts in the reps.
Yeah. We put him through the ringer a couple times on the water projects, but he always kind of came through at the end.
Yeah. Alana, to work ethic, she's just tireless. Just will work all day long. What about you? What personal trait of yours has served you well? What do you think it is about Frank Cartagena that has helped you so far to get to this point?
I think a couple things. I think it's more kind of that. It's always got to be the resiliency of just, you have to be kind of dumb and willing to bash your head into a wall until it kind of breaks down and you get through it. But I think it's a combination of that, and I've always just asked kind of the senior leadership for things, whether it's, kind of dumb, maybe like a little bit of being naive or blind, or just been able to kind of come up with an idea and then go into the CCO's office and ask, like, hey, can we make this?
That's cool.
Whether it's something that we have money for or we don't have money for. That's what happened with, I've seen a pattern now that I look back. I didn't kind of realize it at the time, but I did it at my first job and the second job, and I did it at DDB, and that's kind of where #killer came from. And so it's just like going and asking for things in person rather than over email, or people, if it's good, people will.
That's fascinating to me, because it's like you get where you are because you make it happen, and that's really cool. It's really cool. I'm gonna let that sit. I'm not gonna make a commentary on it. I think that's really awesome. So why did you contact me? Why did you want to talk on this thing? What's the deal with that?
I saw a lot of people on the list that I liked, so that
Thank you to all my guests for creating some sort of relevance to me. You my guests have enabled me to become some sort of percentage of relevant in the world. That's pretty cool. So
yeah, and it's cool. I like it also helps get people to know who I am a little bit too.
Smart. So knowing what you know now, you could go back to day one, Hill Holiday, whisper something in young Frank's ear. What would you say to yourself?
I don't think anything really. I think I could be further along in my career. You see, I would probably tell myself to have, to pick teams, or whether they're in the agency or outside of the agency, that I, envied, and try to beat them sooner.
Interesting.
I think that's probably what I would do.
You have sibling brothers?
Yeah. A brother and a sister.
You're pretty competitive with your brother, are you?
Yeah. My partner's way more competitive than I am. Currently, he played football at UPenn and stuff, so he's more motivated than I am. But you always kind of want to win.
Absolutely.
And see.
Dude, do I look like I was judging you on that? No way, man. I think that's awesome. I think we should all stand to be a little bit more competitive, but supportive. I mean, it's good to hate the team across the hall in a competitive way.
Yeah, we've done that a little bit at Deutsch too. Is kind of created, a competitive nature, a friendly competition between teams. Which
it's a very fine line.
Didn't have it when we started. Yeah,
I think it's great for elevating it to a point, because I know that there's certain schools with cultures, there's certain agencies with cultures where competitiveness is good, protectionism is bad. Like I still would love to be able to feel like I can walk across the hall and give away an idea that makes something better, and not feel like I just screwed myself. You know what I mean? Like you want people to work as a big group too.
Yeah.
Because man, I could tell you, my first job here in New York was at Ogilvy, and the huge multi-team projects they were just a formula for lowering morale, because it was a huge numbers game no matter how good the idea was.
Yeah, we try not to do that unless it's like really tight timelines.
Right, you need just stuff to flesh out.
Or we'll put 4 people on it, and those 4 people will get to kind of retain ownership.
That's great. That's cool.
Whether it's they're working together or separately and then come together, because the projects seem to be bigger now. I don't know. There's no more like one-off TV spots.
They're multi-tentacle. Yeah. That's really interesting. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And listeners, and I'm sorry about the white noise, air conditioning, and the sirens, but we're in New York. It is a portable microphone. So if you want to get a hold of Frank, you can check out his website. It's hisname.com, but it'll take you to a page. It takes you to a page. It's a cargo site now.
Yeah,
but
I let it.
FrankCartagena.com take you straight to.
I didn't pay. That's what happened.
Right, that's fine. I mean, the work
the
work looks like you paid. The spots
but I didn't
run
pay to
perfect.
renew the site, so it now sends you.
That's
to
nice that they give you that little holding page for nothing.
Yeah, I liked it.
It's well designed.
I'll update it after this. I'll pay.
Well, just look for FrankCartagena.com. And you can email him at FrankCartagena2. There's another Frank Cartagena, or just two sided. Yeah, FrankCartagena2 at gmail.com. That's Google's mail service. It's Google Mail. I do believe that has retained its cost-free status. You can reach me, as always, at danspodcast@mac.com. Make sure you like the Facebook page. I've got the link to the dead link page on there, frankcartagena.com. The Facebook page is DGMS Podcast, and it's also on iTunes. Oh, by the way, newsflash, in case you haven't realized this, every episode now is on iTunes. That's a new breaking news, which I discovered recently, so check it out on iTunes if you don't want to go to balsarville.com. And Frank, man, this was fun. Thanks for coming up here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. Listeners, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Until then, see you later. Bye-bye.